Hey guys, this is Matt for cgtuts.com, and in this, the second part of our Canon A1 tutorial, we're going to carry on from where we left off. We're going to create this lens mount here, then we're going to start adding in some of this top detail. So, where we left off, we had this lens mount section. We'd split it into two parts, this front bit and this back bit, and we did that to create these two different corners. So we're now going to go in and kind of complete this object. Now, as with everything, there's a little bit of cleanup to do before we begin. First thing I'm going to do is double click this front section, and I'm going to cut it and paste it into a new mesh layer. And I'm going to rename that guy front just temporarily and paste it in there. I'm going to rename this back guy to back, and these are only temporary layers, so I'm not too worried about the names. Now the second thing I need to do is I'm going to come to a left view, and on this back section you might remember that we added in this extra edge here because we have this indent in the model. Now what I'm going to do is grab all of the polygons above that indent, and I'm going to cut them into the front layer. Now at the moment in this front layer these two parts are still separate, so I'm going to deselect everything and come over here to Vertex and click Merge. And we have 6 vertices merged. Now if I double click, this is one entire object. So, back to perspective mode, I'm going to take a look at things in subdivision surface mode. Now, when we do, you'll see that we lose all of our hard corners. And if I come to our back mesh and do the same, we use the hard corners down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of support those edges and make sure we get those hard corners in subdivision surface mode. So, for ease at the moment, I'm going to shift click the front layer so we get the back and front layer both selected so we can work on both at once. I'm going to hit tab to come out of subdivision surface mode. Then I'm going to grab these edges, and also the edges on both of these corners as well. I'm then going to hit B for bevel and drag out an edge bevel with a round level of 1. Remember that when you have a round level of 1, it keeps the edge that you're beveling and adds an edge on either side of it. So this is just a quick way of supporting up those edges. So I'm going to make it quite a small bevel. So about 150 micrometers looks pretty good. I'm going to hit space and go back to subdivision surface mode, and you see that we keep those nice hard edges there now. Now we've obviously got another little bit of a problem in here, so we're going to go in and fix that. But instead of doing it on both sides, I'm going to split the model into two, work on one side only, and then we'll mirror it over at the end. So with both mesh layers still selected, I'm going to select some of these top edges in the middle. I'm going to hit Alt-C, right-click for loop slice, and making sure that the position is set to 50, the mode set to free, and the count is set to 1, we're going to add in that one extra edge in the middle. So I'm going to hit space to drop that. And we'll do the same down here on the bottom. So grab those 3 edges, Alt-C and right-click, and it should keep the position of the last edge slice. So this is 50%. Space to drop the tool. Then we can select all of the polygons over here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to hit backspace to delete them. So with that done, we can now come in and start looking at this edge here. Now if I come out of subdivision surface mode, you'll see that we have no support edges at the edge of this indent. So we're going to add those in, but before I do, I'm going to quickly come into a right view, and I'm going to click on the back object. So this is the one that is actually the kind of separated part of the lens mount, the indent if you will. I'm going to grab this entire front edge, I'm going to zoom right in, and I'm just going to move this back just a tiny little bit. Like that. And I'm going to do the same thing for this top edge, and this just adds a tiny bit of a gap between the two objects and kind of aids realism a little bit. So with that tiny gap in place, I'm going to go back to perspective mode, and we can start adding in support edges. Now remember, I like to do this by adding an edge on either side of the one you want to support. So what I'm going to do is select this edge here, Alt-C for the loop slice tool. I'm going to come to the symmetry mode, count of 2, and right click. I'm going to drag these out right to the very edge. I'm going to make these quite close to the edge, about 1% on those ones. I'm then going to select this edge here. Same again, loop slice, but with a count of 1 and a mode of 3. I'm going to pull this right up to the top here. So, let's see. About there looks pretty good to me. And with that done, if I now hit tab, you see we get this nice hard corner at the top here. So we need to do the same on the other object, on this front one. So I'm going to select that guy. I'm going to select this edge here. Alt-C, count of 2 and symmetry mode, right click and just drag these guys out. And I'll aim to do this and match kind of the position on the other object, so about 1% for that one. Now we need an edge above, below and on this side running vertically down for this corner here. So first of all I'm going to grab this edge, Alt-C again. Just a lot of loop slicing this to add these edges in. So we add one above, we're going to add one below, and we're going to add one on this side as well. So about there. So we have that kind of square of squares that we had on the other part of the model, though this one's obviously missing. So with that done, if I now go to a subdivision surface mode, we get this nice hard edge there. What we have done is added in these 3 verts on this outer edge, which is going to give us a little bit of a crease. So to get rid of that, we're going to do what we did at the very top of the camera model and kind of divert some of these edges around the model. So I'm going to hit C for the edge slice tool and add an edge from here to here. With that done, I can select this edge and this edge, backspace to delete them. I can select this guy and backspace to delete that. And then I can double click this edge to select this entire loop, and we can just get rid of that. And we've taken it from 3 verts added to 2 verts, and this just makes things a little bit more manageable. Now with that done, we can also grab this edge. I'm going to come over to the edge menu and click on the slide tool. I'm just going to slide this right up to the very middle of this polygon. This just kind of gives us a nice even flow of verts, which makes this curved surface look a little bit better. So with that done, back to subdivision surface mode, I'm going to bring up our back layer as well to take a look at what we've got, and things are looking pretty good. So the next step is to fill in this giant hole down here, and to do that we need a reference for this back object. And what I mean by that is, if we take a look, what we're going to do is add in polygons coming from here to match this edge, but obviously there were no polygons here to connect to at the moment, so we're going to grab them from this front layer. So I'm going to select 2 of these polygons and hit L to select the entire loop. I'm going to copy them and paste them into this layer, and then I'm going to hide the front layer for the moment. Now with everything in this layer, I'm going to hit Tab to come out of subdivision surface mode. I'm going to double click this polygon to select this entirely new object, and just hit Shift H. And that just keeps this but hides everything else in the viewport. And all I'm going to do is just select these top polygons and delete them. Now I'm going to hit U for unhide, which brings everything back. Reselect this front object and go to a right view, and we're just going to undo that little gap that we added in. So we've got this bit here, but we want these 2 parts to be right next to each other. Now if you activate the move tool and right click, expecting the axis and the gimbal to show up where you click and it doesn't come up, what you can do is come up to Action Center and click Automatic, and then click it again, and hopefully things should be good. And for some reason they're not. I think maybe I was just zoomed in a little bit too much. You know, just if I zoom in past that point, the gimbal disappears, so just be careful with that. So I'm just going to move this slightly on the Z. We don't need to be too accurate, but as close as you can get it. And then space to drop the tool, and back to perspective mode. Now what I'm going to do is just delete this extra top polygon as well. And I'm going to come in and merge some of these verts. So we're using our handy keyboard shortcut that we had, which was, for me at least, it was Shift and then the tilde key, which is to the left of the Z key. So that's doing the join verts command, and we use the macro system to put that together in part 1. Now when we come to this vert, you'll notice we have nothing to connect to, so we need to add in an extra edge running across here. So I'm going to select this edge, and again with the loop slice, and move that down to as close as you can get it, and if you can't get it perfect, doesn't matter overly, just get it roughly in place, and then come up here and use the slide tool to slide it right into position. Now I'm going to select both of these verts, and again use that command to merge them both together. Now you see we've got another edge there but none here, so we need to do the same thing. I'm going to grab those edges, loop slice, and bring this down, and this one basically just needs to be as close as you can get it. So about there looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to hit space to drop the tool. Now with that merged, what we're going to do is just go around and fill in these verts. Now before I forget quickly, we're going to merge these 2 down here. And we're also going to add in an extra edge, 1 here, to match that vert. And again, get it as close as you can, and then if needs be, you can slide it. I might just slide that one just a little bit. And then merge these guys. We're going to add in 1 more. Just there. So with that extra edge added in, we can now shape this corner. So I'm going to grab both of these selections of verts here. I'm going to go to a right view, and we're going to pull these back to match the line on the reference image, so about there. And then I'm going to go back to perspective, grab these verts here, go back to the right view, and we're going to pull these back to match that line. And I'm going to quickly deselect everything and hit Tab to check that curve. Now don't worry about this section up here for the minute, we're just concentrating purely on this bit, and you can see that we're following this curve nicely and coming up to this part here. Now at the bottom of the model, we essentially have a curve coming from this corner all the way up to the top here. And you can see right now that we've basically got these two flat polygons and this one slope. Now what we want to do is use these verts to kind of increase that slope slightly. So I'm just going to pull these down just a little bit. And if we go to a bottom view, you can see this here, which is this section. So about there looks pretty good to me. Tab, and remember, don't worry about this section for the minute, we're just looking at this curve here, and this section now looks good, so we have that kind of flattened curved back corner on that back section of the model. With that done, we now need to fill in the polygons, so I'm going to come up to the top here, select this vert in the middle, and this vert, hit P to create a poly. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of the corner, so select the vert in the middle, and then in a clockwise direction, select both of those two as well, and hit P. And then, what should we do? We've got this vert here, but no vert in the middle here. So what I might do, select these edges and loop slice with it set to 50% to add in an extra edge. And with that done, I'm going to double click this entire loop and hit P to create a polygon. I'll then use the edge slice tool to drag in an edge from there up to the middle. Then we need to split these up into quads and tris. Now the easiest way of doing this would be to grab an edge from this middle of this corner here, and for the moment I'm just going to take this up to this middle point. Now instead of reselecting the edge slice tool, I'm just going to continue it straight down to the middle of this curve over here and hit space to drop. So now this is a tri, this is a tri, these are all quads, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit Tab to go into Subdivision Surface mode and see what we've got. Now things are looking pretty good. We've got a nice kind of curve going on here, but you see that this front edge is perhaps a little bit too curved. It's not as sharp as the rest of the model. So we need to add in some extra edges to shore that up. Now instead of coming in here with the edge slice tool, what I might do is just grab all of these polygons and we're going to bevel them in slightly. So I'm just going to select them and bevel them in the same distance as this distance here. So about there looks pretty good to me. So space to drop the tool. Deselect all your polygons and hit Tab again to take a look at what we've got. Now if you want to check what the reflections are doing, you can always come up here to where it says shaded and come down to reflection. And what you can do then is rotate the model and see how whatever backdrop you have loaded, by default it's these clouds, you can see how they react to the edges on the model. Now things to look out for would be points like this. You'll see that this vert here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges attached to it, and it basically looks like a star, and this will cause a slight pinching effect in any reflections, as you can see from the way those clouds are reacting, kind of moving over the model. But in some circumstances, there's not a whole lot you can do about those things. You can try and redirect them, and believe me, I've tried to redirect this a couple of times, and to be fair, it's not going to be overly noticeable on the final, so I'm quite happy with the way that this is set out. So I'm going to come up to Reflection, and go back to Shaded Mode. And now that we've connected these polygons in, we don't need this extra row running across the top of the model, so I'm going to hit Tab, select 2 of the polygons in that very top row that we added in, hit Outer Loop, and hit Delete to get rid of them. So with that done, we can now start adding some thickness to this section and also the front section. But quickly before we do, I just want to make sure everything lines up with the front ref. And you can see that we're a little tiny bit off here. So I'm going to make the front layer visible and select it so we can work on both layers at once. I'm going to grab all of these verts in here and just move these to the left slightly. And do the same with this guy, move it slightly to the left. And then I'm going to grab all of these guys in here, not this middle one, and just move them all slightly to the left, like that. And it just lines things up with the reference image a tiny little bit better. So with that done, we can now go back and just make sure that everything looks as expected, and things are looking pretty good, so I'm kind of happy with that. So what we're going to do is come back to our back layer, I'm going to hide the front layer, we're going to add in a little bit of thickness to this model. So the first things first, out of Subdivision Surface mode, I'm going to grab this edge, the next edge along, and tap the up arrow to keep selecting. I'm going to select all of these guys. Remember there's a tiny one at the top as well. And with all of those things selected, I'm going to hit Z for edge extend. We're just going to extend these in, and I'm going to use the blue circle just to pull these in equally like that. So let's go about there. And then what we're going to do is come to the front view, and we're just going to pull these up to roughly about there, so they're roughly in line. We'll do the same thing over here. Now we don't have to worry too much about this. In fact, I might leave it slightly off for the moment, because what we can do is when we mirror this back across, we can just weld those verts together. So with that done, I'm now going to zoom right in this corner, grab this edge and loop slice to add in an extra edge just on the other side of that crease. So about there. So with that done, I'm going to hit tab again to take a look at what we've got. Now things are looking a little bit funky over here. They're not quite smoothing as I would have hoped, but let's take a look. It's not terrible. It could be better, but it's not terrible. So I think we'll leave that go for the minute. We've got a nice harsh edge coming in here, and then things get a little bit soft as they come over to here. But for the moment, I think we'll leave that as is. So with that done, we now need to add in some width on the back edges. So again, I'm going to come down to the bottom of the model, select that bottom edge, like that, select the one next to it, and tap the up arrow to keep selecting in a loop. And remember there is that small one at the top. Then just like before, edge extend and scale in using the blue. So like that, so it doesn't have to be quite as far this one. But I'm then going to go to a back view, and we'll just bring these verts up till they're roughly in line with the others. And come down to the bottom, and we'll just move these slightly in line with those so my OCD doesn't kick off. Now with that done, we're going to add in an extra support edge, just like before, so just there, and this will give us a nice tight edge on the back. So with that done, I'm going to bring back our front layer, like so, and put that in subdivision surface mode and take a look at the two together. So things are looking pretty good there. So now we need to add some thickness to this front section. So I'm going to save our scene to make sure that we don't lose any of what we've done. Click on the front layer and hide the back layer. Now simply with this version we just need a little bit of thickness on this entire back edge. So I'm going to select, let's see, what should we do? Why don't we select this top edge like this, and we'll select all of these guys as well. In fact, I'm just going to keep hitting up 2 more times. Now we don't want to come around this corner, we just want this back edge like that. So you want to stop, then come over to here, select this very corner edge and this one next to it, and then tap up until we get to the very middle of the model. Now with that done, what are we going to do? Let's see. I'm going to hit edge extend and scale in just like before. And what this will do is just give us a little bit of thickness in there. And with that done, I'm going to come to a back view, and we're just going to move these verts up here, just up a little bit, so we get kind of the same thickness, just like that. Now remember, we don't need to worry about this for the minute, because we can weld that in a second. But what we do need to do is go in and add in an extra edge running down here. So, select an edge, loop slice and drag that out. Then we need to do the same thing down here, so I'm going to select this second edge in, and do the same thing. So lots of loop slicing on this model. And we've got these edges running across here. So what I'm going to do is select this guy and this guy. Ooh, nearly. There you go. And I'm going to bridge them like that. Now at the moment I can't just go in and connect these polygons together because we have an extra edge that's needed. So I'm going to select this edge, loop slice yet again with a count of 2 in a mode of symmetry. I'm just going to drag out those edges like that. We can then go in and select this entire edge loop by double clicking, and then I'm going to control click both of the end edges to get rid of it and bridge to fill it back in. With that done, if we go to subdivision surface mode, you'll see that we have this nice tight edge running around there. Now at the moment obviously this is kind of sloping down and the back of the model goes straight across, so what we want to do is make sure that this is actually running straight. So I'm going to go to a back view, and I'm going to grab these guys. Actually, I'm going to go out of subdivision surface mode first. Grab these guys and just pull those up till they're flat, like that. Then come into these guys and do the same thing. Just pull them up till they're flat. You might have to tweak 1 or 2 things, like so. Would have been better really to do this before we did the extra bevel, but it doesn't matter. Things happen like that. So just get this as flat as you can, like so. And hopefully, in perspective mode, that'll look pretty good. And that does look pretty good to me. So with that done, we now need to add in the extra thickness on the top here of the back model. So I'm going to quickly run back to the back model. We need to fill in these polygons at the top here. So best way of doing it is pretty much exactly like what we just did. Select this one edge, select the edge on the other side and bridge. Select this edge in here and loop slice with symmetry and a count of 2 to add in this extra edge. And then we can go in, select all of the edges we want to bridge, and bridge. So as you can see, there's a lot of repetitive tasks in this, but it's always good to go in and get these things looking right. But as you continue to model this object, you'll notice me using the bridge tool, loop slice tool, an awful lot. It's two of my favourite tools really to use in Modo, especially with this kind of very, very intense product modelling like this. So we now have this nice indent running in here. So I'm going to select our front layer and deselect our back layer. Now what we need to do is select all of these front edges. So I'm going to select these top 2 and click up a couple times to select all the way around the model. And we'll do exactly the same thing as before. Now, I've selected these edges, but I actually don't want to be in Subdivision Surface mode. Now, instead of deselecting and tabbing out of Subdivision Surface mode and then having to reselect all of the edges, what I can do is actually just click 3 on my keyboard to go to Polygon mode, tab out of Subdivision Surface and go back to 2, and it will keep your edge selection. This is a handy tip, just in case you didn't know. So with the edges selected, I'm going to hit Z, just like before, for Edge Extend, then scale it in using the blue. So we want this to go in a little bit further, this one. So I'm going to scale it in, and I'm going to move this ever so slightly to the left. Then to a front view, we want to line up some of these verts, but actually I think we'll give that a miss. We'll just weld those guys together in a bit. So I'm going to come in like this, and we're going to add an extra support edge in there, making sure that we come out of symmetry mode. We only want one cut in here. So I'm going to put that guy there. And we don't seem to have an extra cut there. Why is that? No reason, seems like I just forgot it. So I'm going to come up to this top corner, select these guys and loop slice an extra edge running around the front like that as well. And with that done, we have this nice front section that's now flat and ready to go. And this is basically the section, if I come to a front view, that we can see underneath this arch that we just previously created. So with this done, I'll toggle on our back layer, and this done, we look pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to start by mirroring these over, and then we can add in a tiny little bit of extra detail just to this bottom bit here. So with that done, I'm just going to quickly come out of Subdivision Surface mode, and I just want to tweak one last thing. So we've got this vert just off slightly there, so I'm going to pull that out a little bit. And if we come down here, you'll see that these verts, this line basically isn't straight. This kind of comes in a little bit before coming back out. So I'm just going to pull these out ever so slightly, like that, to kind of straighten this edge up just a little bit. So with that done, I've kind of had half an idea about this edge actually, so I'm just going to take a quick look at that to see if we can get this looking any better. Now at the moment we have these 3 surfaces intersecting. We have this top flat bit, we have this kind of curved section, and we have this side section, and where they intersect on the very corner it's very curvy and it doesn't kind of maintain the nice edges we've got going on here. So what I might do is zoom in and take a look at trying to make that a little bit better basically. So what I tend to do in this kind of circumstance is just use the edge slice tool and cut up some edges, and you want to try and maintain quads. So by adding in this extra edge here, this is still a quad, this is still a quad, and these are still quads, but I've just added in 2 extra triangles right in there like that. So with that done, I'm going to go to Subdivision Surface mode and take a look. And this bit's looking a bit sharper now, but this bit is still not that great. So let's have another look in. So we've got this vert to play with here and these 3. So why don't we grab this guy and add an extra edge coming down to that point and then up the other side. So this kind of gives us this being a quad, this is still a quad. So those are quads like that, and these are tris. So we could get rid of this middle line here to make this one a quad. So let's have a look at that. So tab, check that out. Hey, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go to reflection mode quickly. Hey, check that out. So we've got these nice harsh edges in here now, kind of keeping this nice and tight right up to this very corner now. We have kind of introduced these 2 kind of star verts in here, and these are the ones to look out for. They might make the reflection go a bit crazy, but it doesn't look too bad. So that's actually a lot better than what we had. So yes, glad we did that. So tab out of Subdivision Surface mode and bring up the front as well. And now we're going to mirror these both across this axis. Now, just in case things have moved about a little bit, we're going to take the center of our mirror point from the lens template that we put into our reference group. So I'm going to toggle that guy down and come up and select our lens template. Now, in order to get the value, the position of this bottom vert, which is going to be in the center, we're going to select it, and then making sure that our action center is set to automatic, I'm going to bring up the move tool. And when we do, the gimbal will jump automatically to that vert, just like before, and we can read off the X value from the Action Center Auto 3D pane down here in the transform properties. So we want 3.99 millimeters. That's going to be the center of our mirroring operation across the X-axis. So I can hit space to drop the tool. I'm going to hide our lens template and roll up our ref group, and then come back to the back group. So I'm going to take a quick look. Everything looks good. So I'm going to come up to the duplicate menu and click on mirror. And you want to make the center X value the value that we took from that vert. So it was 3.99 millimeters. Now remember, we're mirroring across the X axis as well. So you want to make sure that that is highlighted and then click apply. Now if we zoom in, you can see that these verts in the center aren't quite lining up, so things were moved in the creation of our lens mount, so it's a good job that we took the value from our lens template. Now we're going to do the same thing for the front group, so I'm going to select that, and again with the mirror tool selected, select that again, I deselected it by mistake, so with nothing selected and the center value set to 3.99 and the axis set to X, I'm going to click apply again, and space to drop the tool, and now that all we need to do is basically join up these verts. So in this front group, I'm going to select all of these middle verts that should be joined up, and all of these top guys as well. And I'm going to activate the scale tool and slam these down on the X-axis. Now with them still selected, I'm going to come to the vertex menu and click merge. And we'll do the same for the back object as well. So come down to the very bottom, I'm going to select all of these guys, scale tool, slam them down on the X, and then click merge. And with that done, if we bring them both up and click tab, that is our lens mount object almost entirely completed. And I say almost because there is one small thing we have to do. If I come to shaded mode quickly and go to a bottom view, you'll see that we have this screw that is going from the front section into the back section, and we now need to go in and add this to the objects. So how exactly are we going to do this? Well, don't worry, Modo makes it quite easy for us. With both objects selected, I'm going to select the bottommost edge loops, like so. Go back to a bottom view, and with our reference image visible, I'm going to quickly switch to polygon mode and hit tab to come out of subdivision surface mode, back to edges mode to retain that edge selection, then hit bevel, and we're going to bevel these out like that. I'm beveling them with a round level of 1. What we're looking for is to get an edge right on the corner of this, like that. With that done, I'm going to hit space to drop the tool, and we can start work on these separately. So first of all, I'm going to make the indent, which is the back section. So I'm going to hide our front section. I'm going to select this edge and loop slice to add an edge right at the top like that. I'm going to add one right in the middle like that as well. Actually, slightly above middle, so about 59 or something like that. Now with that done, I can go to perspective mode. And let's see, I'm going to delete all of these polygons in here. So just get rid of those guys. Now back in the bottom view, with our reference image visible, we're going to move these verts into position to make this curve. So I'm going to grab these two, and I'm going to scale them in on the x-axis slightly, and pull them down to meet that curve. I'm then going to grab these two, pull them down on the x slightly, and scale them in. Like that, so we get this nice curve here, and I might grab these as well. Actually, no, we'll leave those for the minute. So we end up with this nice curve here. Now it needs a little bit of tweaking, so I'm going to grab these top two edges and pull them back a little bit. Now these edges and these edges need to be brought in slightly, but we need this to be in the same position on both the front and the back object. So I'm going to bring our front object up, select that as well, and then I'm going to select all of these guys at once and just bring them in just a little bit like that. Now with that done, I'm going to hide our front layer again and bring back our back, and you can see we've got that nice curve in there. Now I think maybe we'll just tweak those in a little bit further like that, just to make that a little bit more curved, but that looks pretty good to me. So with that done, we now need to basically extrude this down so we get kind of like the inside of a tube. So to do that, I'm going to select all of these top edges and just continue selecting round, edge extend, and pull them down slightly. Now instead of having to look over here, I'm going to hit the W key for the move tool and right click, and it will still bring those new edges down like that. Now I bring them down to meet this edge here, like so. With that done, I'm going to edge extend again and bring them down to the very bottom. Now, things are looking a bit off there, so I'm curious about that, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So space to drop the tool, and we just need to weld these verts together. So I'm going to click that one and weld them. And we'll do the same on the other side, like that. The same at the top here, and over here as well. So with that done, if I hit tab, you'll see we get a nice inside of the tube. However, obviously this is a little bit too soft up here, so we need to add an edge running around the entire loop. So I'm going to select the edges on this side and hit loop slice, and add in 2 edges there. Same on the other side, like so. And we don't want these coming up here, we actually want this entire loop to come around the model. So I'm going to select both of these edges and hit backspace to get rid of them. And then I'm going to come to this part, double click this loop and double click this loop, and backspace to get rid of those guys as well. Now with the edge slice tool, or C, we can quickly come in and move these into position, add in some extra edges, so do that like that, drop the tool, and then we need to weld these together. So I'm going to select both of these guys and weld. And then because this is a flat surface, we can move it as long as we use the green circle. So get that so it lines up about right. Do the same on the other side, hit the 2, weld them with your hotkey, and then move them using the green circle. Now if we go to Subdivision Surface Mode, you can see this top edge is a lot tighter. So that looks pretty good. So that is the back section done. So now we need to move on to the front section. Now this is going to have a kind of a bit poking out, which will be the same shape as this, just a little bit smaller. So what we can do to save us some time is go into the back layer again and quickly copy over these polys. So I'm going to quickly tab out of Subdivision Surface Mode and zoom in on this bottom section. I'm going to grab these top rows of polys just inside here. So just the top row for this one. Up to get that last one and copy, and we'll paste that into the front layer. And we want to make sure they're flipped so they're facing the right way, so double click to select them all and hit F, and that faces them in the correct direction. Now we need to go in and quickly delete some polys on the front section, so I'm going to get rid of, let's get rid of these 4 for the minute, and we'll see how that works for us. Now what we need to do is basically join these up to this front section, so I'm going to select this vert and weld it to this one, and weld it to this one, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So this one goes to this one goes to this one, and then what we can do, if you're like me, you like things lining up nicely, is select 2 of these edges and hit the up key to select all the way around, but don't select that last little edge in there, and we can just pull these guys down, or up rather, to the correct position. Now with that done, what we need to do is grab the entire loop. So again, go all the way around, but get that last little edge this time. And we're going to extend these down to that section of the model, and then we'll just weld these bottom verts, like so. So that shortcut really is coming in handy. Now with that done, we can double click this loop and hit P to create a polygon in there. And what can we do? Let's go in and we need to strengthen this up. So what I think we'll do is bevel this guy in slightly like that, and then I'll get rid of this guy and get rid of this guy. We want to add in 2 new edges, so select one over here, and with the loop slice tool we're going to add in an edge just there, and we'll do the same thing over here as well. So loop slice and add in an edge, and these are basically in position so that we can come in and weld these guys together like that. So do the same thing here. Ooh. Make sure you get that first edge and weld those, and then we'll weld this guy to this guy. So we now have that entire section done, so I'm going to hit Tab to go into Subdivision Surface Mode and take a look at what we've got. Now things are looking pretty good. This edge is nice, but this edge here is a little curved, so we need to add in some support edges. So select a few there, again with the loop slice, and just drag that into position. Do the same on this side, drag that into position there, and hit space to drop the tool. Back into Subdivision Surface Mode, and things are looking a lot better. Now, if I go to the bottom view and zoom out a little bit, you'll see that we have this screw in here. So we're going to create a slight indent for that before it gets into the actual screw body itself. So I'm going to quickly select some of these edges, and I'm going to kind of separate this screw section from the rest of the body by doing this. So we're adding an extra edge running all the way around. Now I'm going to select these polygons in here and delete them. I'm going to double click this edge loop and come up here, hold down the Alt key and click Convert, and this will convert our edge loop into vertices. This enables us to tell us, this tells us how many vertices are in this edge loop. So this edge loop contains 14 verts, and this is going to come in handy in a second. Now what we need to do is, still in our front layer, we'll go to our Basic tab and we'll click on the Cylinder tool, and I'm going to click and drag out the shape of that screw, but we want to make it ever so slightly bigger. So I'm looking over here in the radius. We want the X radius and Z radius to be the same, so I think 1.35 should do it, so I'm going to change that manually. And the important part is we want the sides to be the same number as the amount of vertices in that edge loop, so we want 14 sides on this model. So with that done, I'm going to hit space to drop the tool, and actually I'm still over here in the X radius, so I'm going to hit enter for that and then space to drop the tool. And we need to go in, pick up that polygon, I'm going to flip it with the F key, and in the front view I'm going to move it up to meet the bottom of the model, like that. Then back in perspective we can come in, and I'm going to double click that entire edge loop, double click the edge loop that makes up this section here, and making sure we're not in subdivision surface mode, I'm going to come to edge and click bridge, and this will fill in that entire polygon for us. Now to create an indent for the screw, I'm going to select this middle polygon, bevel it in slightly, then shift click and bevel it in again. And what we'll do with this guy is pull this down into the model a little bit. And that's beveled a little bit too much. Bring it to about there. Shift click again and drag it down further, and then finally shift click again and pull it in and delete that polygon. Now what we want to do is shore up some of these edges, so I'm going to select this edge, and I'm going to hit Alt C for loop slice, count of 2 and a mode of symmetry. We're just going to pull those out like that. Space to drop the tool, and we can go into subdivision surface mode to check our handiwork, and you can see that things are looking really good. The best part being, of course, that this matches up perfectly with the back model that we had previously. If I was to put that into subdivision surface mode, it is. And you see that things are looking really good in there. So we're not going to put the screw in just yet. We're going to add that kind of detail into the model later. So, ladies and gentlemen, our lens mount is now completely done. So we're going to group both of those mesh layers by selecting them both and then hitting Ctrl G. I'm going to rename that group to lens mount, if I could spell, and then I'm going to create a new mesh item. So I'm going to go to the top view. Now the first thing we're going to create is going to be this box here. So with that mesh layer selected, I'm going to come to the Basic tab and click on the Cube tool. I'm going to drag out a cube to match our reference as close as we can. So zoom in and get this as close as you can. And then with that done, when you're happy, you can go to a front view. We need to move it up into position. So I'm going to move it to the very top and then drag down on the green cross to meet the top of the camera body. Now with that done, I'm going to go to perspective mode and hit space to drop the tool. I'm going to hide our body sections and lens mount so we can see what's going on. Now the first thing I want to do is cut this in half. So I'm going to select these edges here, and using the Alt-C combination to bring up the loop slice tool, I'm going to right click to activate and change our position to 50%. Now I'm doing this so that I can delete these top polygons, and we'll mirror it over when we've completed this bottom section. This just speeds up our modeling workflow a little bit. Now you can see we've got this curved corner down here on the bottom right, so I'm going to drag loop select around that edge, and then with the bevel tool with the round level set to 1, I'm just going to drag that out to create that corner. Now with that done, I'm going to go in and we need to add some support edges to this. If I was to go into subdivision surface mode right now, it would completely lose its shape entirely. So first thing I'm going to do is add in 2 edges running around this side. So with the count set to 2 and the mode set to symmetry, I'm just going to move that up like that. Then you can keep checking in subdivision surface mode just to make sure that things are looking as you want. Now the easiest thing to do would be to select this top polygon and this bottom polygon, and I'm going to bevel these in slightly. Now in doing this, we create this extra edge running around the sides, but we do have a little bit of cleanup to do. So I'm going to deselect and space to drop the tool. I'm then going to select this polygon here, this thin polygon at the end, and the entire bottom polygon, and just hit delete to get rid of them. We don't need those guys anymore. I'm then going to select the verts that are slightly out of sync here. So we see these two are not quite straight. Neither are these two up the top. I'm going to go to a top view, and we're just going to drag these up into position. So, like that. Now with those in position, we have a tiny bit more kind of editing to do down the back here. Now we want this edge to actually run around the back down here and meet up with this edge, and the same thing around this way. So I'm going to deselect that, activate the edge slice tool, come in, and we're just going to draw an extra edge running down the back like that, and join it up to there. And instead of dropping the tool, I'm just going to come straight up this other side and join it back up to the top. And with that done, I can select this edge and delete them. Now in Subdivision Surface Mode, you can see we've got quite a nice tight edge at the back here, but it could afford to be a little tighter. So what I'm going to do is loop slice these guys, remembering to have a mode of free and a count of 1. You drag that to about there, and this will just tighten up this back corner. So we need to draw an edge from here all the way across to the middle to make sure that we keep our quads, and then we need to quad up this section as well. But before we do, we're going to take a quick look at this corner. In top view, if I go to Subdivision Surface Mode, you see that it actually isn't looking as we want. It's kind of smoothing out down to the corners, and the reason for that is that these edges are not being supported at all. So using the slice tool, which is Shift C, I'm going to add in one edge running up there and one edge running across there. And the important thing is their positioning. You'll see in adding in those two edges, I've now created these 4 polygons, and these are obviously running down the side as well. And what happens is these edges support these inside ones and make sure that they stay where we want them. Now if I go to the top view and go to Subdivision Surface Mode, you'll see that our corner is looking a lot better. So with that done, I'm just going to quickly check everything else, and everything's looking good, so we can now mirror it over to the other side. So I'm going to double click to select, go to duplicate, mirror, and we're mirroring it across the Z-axis, so make sure you select that, and then zoom right in. We want to right click on this line. Now whenever you mirror like this, it always makes sense to go through and check that your vertices are lined up, and you can do that quickly by just selecting over a vert. You can see that we think this is 1, but down here it tells us that it's 2. So a good thing to do would be to grab all of these guys. And something strange is going on down there, so I'm going to grab out a little bit. See, these guys are being smoothed back into the bodies of the model. So with all of these verts selected, I'm going to hit R for the scale tool, and with negative scale turned off, I'm going to slam them down on the Z-axis, come up to Vertex, and click Merge. And hopefully things will be looking a lot better, and we should only have one vert on each of these places up here. Now the final thing we're going to do in this video is go to a front view, and bringing our body sections back, you'll notice that this edge here needs to line up with this slightly slanted edge here. So what I'm going to do is select this entire group of polygons. I'm going to move them slightly to the right, so this bottom edge just hits this line here. I'm then going to hit space to drop the tool, come up here to our full offs and select linear. Now you want to drag from the very bottom of your selection to the very top, activate the move tool and drag to the left, and this will give us this nice slanting edge. Now you can see at the moment I'm pushing slightly through the camera body here, but we can fix that in a second. So I'm going to hit space to drop the tool, turn off our full off, and then move these slightly to the right. With that done, we can go back to the perspective view, and if we select our top section as well, you can see our box now fits perfectly up against the top and this side of the camera here.